Welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for today's thought leadership webinar, Boardroom Buy-in for Sustainability, Ask the Expert. I'm delighted to welcome back Rhona Pearce today. She is Head of Sustainability at Cooper Parry, and she's a highly experienced sustainability leader. Many of you may actually remember her from the excellent webinar that she done with us back in April on key sustainability regulation changes for 2026. If you weren't able to see that session, I'd definitely recommend going back, catching up and seeing that recording afterwards, as it provides some really great context alongside today's discussion. Today's session takes a different but equally important focus, exploring one of the biggest challenges sustainability professionals face, and that's securing genuine boardroom buy-in. Rhona will share practical tactics for influencing senior leaders, communicating in commercial language, and building compelling business cases that really drive action. The session will explore how executive boards make decisions, why ESG proposals often fall short despite good intentions, and practical techniques to position sustainability as a business critical driver of resilience, profitability, and long-term success. There's also going to be a live Q&A, which is going to give you the opportunity to soundboard some of your own challenges with an experienced sustainability leader. We're delighted you could join us today in the heat. We're really grateful, glad you could be here. So let's get started. Over to you, please, Rhona.
Thank you for the really kind introduction, Sam. And it's great to be back. If you want to move to the next slide, please. Can't believe it's 3 months ago since I was last here, but welcome to everyone in the audience. So the purpose really of the webinar is to kind of give you guys a look on, if you're working in sustainability, ESG impact, how you give you these tactics, the commercial language, the political awareness, and the influencing capabilities, essentially to secure that executive board buy-in and senior leadership. And it's about moving our conversations away from kind of aspiration and purpose into actual decision making and sign-offs. The webinar is intentionally practical. It's quite grounded in my own unique style, and it's really honest about some of the realities that we all face every day and a lot of those frustrations as well. Next slide, please. So in the next 25 minutes. So I'm going to make sure we've got loads of time at the end so we can just fly around some ideas and questions. But what I'd really love you to be able to take away from this, and at the end of the presentation, there's 2 takeaway slides with the key areas. But at the end of this, I really would like you to be able to understand how you approach the board, the terminology that you use, how you can construct a professional compelling business case, and also how you can show that return on investment. And I'm sure we've all heard the ROI question 1,000,000,000 times. I really would like you to understand some of those motivational factors. So I'm going to break it down into different types of leadership. Next slide, please. And then I really would also like you to gain the practical influencing techniques to help buy in. My previous career, whilst I've been in ESG for 10 years, has been in commercial marketing, project and change management, and also in innovation. So I'm able to pull on a lot of those tools and tactics that I've used over the years into ESG, and they have really helped me an awful lot. So I want to be able to share that. Love to be able to help you recognize the most common ESG mistakes. We've all done them. I've done them, and I probably continue to do them when I get lost in my passion and frustration. And I'd like you to be able to relieve understanding kind of the cost center commerciality side of all of this, but actually reframing that around resilience, profitability, looking at talent and risk management. Next slide, please. So we're going to cover the following 6 areas. First, I'm going to talk through why we struggle in the boardroom or within the senior leadership team. I'll then talk about how we understand some of the psychology and the board motivations. Obviously, this is quite sweeping. I'm not sure exactly who everyone is on the call. You might be on an early part of your journey, might only have been in ESG for a couple of years or only ever been in ESG. So I want to give that broader perspective. Then we'll look at building the business case and demonstrating the return on investment. I'll give you the tactics, the influence, and how to secure that buy-in. By the way, let me just tell you, it's not always going to work and you're not always going to get that buy-in, but I'm going to help you feel as confident as possible. What doesn't work? What are the main blockers? You probably know what most of the main blockers are, but anyway, we'll run through that anyway in case you don't. And then some practical actions. And then, as I said, the two slides at the end will give you a real practical takeaway. Next slide, please. So, winning the board. How do we actually influence the executive decision making? And how do we build a business case that actually gets funded / approved, I guess, in this scenario? So, why good ESG strategies fail in the boardroom, and what successful sustainability professionals tend to do differently, in my experience? I'm not saying that I'm an amazing professional and I get everything right. So let's just put that out there at the very beginning. But essentially, many executive boards publicly state that sustainability matters, right? You'll have seen it on impact reports and many kind of statements on LinkedIn and things like that. They'll speak confidently about purpose, responsibility, climate emissions, net zero, but inside their organizations, many of you guys as professionals, you experience the absolute opposite in reality, right? I can't see any of you, but I'm sure some of you are breathing a sigh of relief and nodding. But the funding request gets stalled, our initiatives remain under-resourced, and our operational teams really kind of resist the change that we essentially are looking for. So executives will often praise it in public forums, but the reality of it is very often deprioritized within our organizations. Next slide, please. So why does it struggle? They don't tend to struggle because the board kind of rejects sustainability, but they fail because often the business case is quite weak. We translate it poorly, or that commercially it's not connected to the overarching business. And one of the greatest frustrations in sustainability is hearing excuses, saying that ESG matters while kind of really refusing to change those behaviours. It's rarely an ideological kind of position. The executive boards operate in highly intense environments. They're dominated by competing priorities, risk exposure, margin, geopolitical issues. Then they've got investor kind of tensions and expectations and operational performance. So the board is always doing this balancing act, and it's cost versus growth, always. And I think for you on this call, that's true whether it's a public or private sector. It's true whether it's a brand or a service. Okay, so I think this is 200 years of building economies and capitalism, and these are the things that we need to kind of take a step back and understand. So our ESG professionals, we often overestimate how much executives care about sustainability, and we often underestimate how much kind of the executives care about and the commercial value and things like that, because we're so passionate about what we do. We believe in what we do. We understand the ROI, but often we underestimate our passions into that boardroom. And the reality is an uncomfortable one, but it's true. Next slide, please. So how do these guys actually and girls actually make decisions in the boardroom? So the boardroom does not buy ESG per se, the board buys outcomes. So depending on your experience of whether you're trying to change the wider workforce, which different webinar, different time, but when you're trying to change the board itself, we need to understand how do we present to them and in what frame of mind. This is all about psychology, ultimately. So if any of you have ever done your commercial training or you've done project management, things like that, it's all about how to influence others. So boards tend to rarely approve initiatives because someone's passionate, right? I get told all the time, you're passionate, your energy, but it can often stall. So you've got to have that key kind of business narrative as well, or actually you just get a nice pat on the back and then nothing ever changes, right? So they will tend to approve initiatives because they believe it's a credible case and it aligns with the organisation's priorities. So they'll always assess decisions through 4 main areas of questioning. So one, the first question is really around risk. What happens if we do nothing? So factor that into when you present to them. The second is around the commercial impact. So, what measurable value does this create or protect in our organisation? Can this realistically be implemented without operational disruption? That's a big one, right? Really, really big. And the fourth concerns around accountability. So, who owns the delivery of this, and how will the success of this be married? We definitely don't want to marry anyone up. Be measured. So, I think many of us will kind of unintentionally fail because we spend too much time discussing ambition and not enough about that more cutthroat business kind of process in terms of discussing the consequences and the cost of inaction and measurable business outcomes. Next slide, please. So, understanding the CEO mindset. First and foremost, congratulations if you can actually get to your CEO, right? So, sometimes there's lots of layers you've got to get through. Sometimes I've had the pleasure of some businesses where I can sit on a table with my feet up on the desk and have a chat to the CEO, but it really, really varies, right? But what the CEO says in public versus what's going on privately are often two very, very different things. And I think you guys really understand that. So, what he or she cares about is really resilience, reputation, investor confidence, market positioning, and strategic growth. Strip everything else away. That is what they are focused on. And you'll see that in terms of a business organization. So you need to position ESG as a leadership issue linked to resilience and future readiness. So instead of saying, for example, our ESG strategy supports climate responsibility, flip the narrative and start to talk about how our strategy protects market relevance, investor confidence, and future competitive. It's still the same thing, but it's just a change of language. In the lovely, wonderful world of AI, we can put our narrative into AI and ask it to flip it into the commercial director or the people director, etc. There's lots of tools out there to help you if you haven't got experience in other business functions. Next slide, please. So now moving on to the Chief Financial Officer. I actually think our role is so connected to this role because every single penny of spend is what we measure and we monitor and we look at when we're looking at carbon emissions. But they don't tend to reject ESG. It's all about the money. It's all about the financial logic. So the CFO is not asking whether sustainability matters, but is often asking whether this investment is a credible one against the competing priorities that it might have. So what we should really focus on here is explaining how we are avoiding regulatory penalties, procurement requirements, and what that might mean if we do or don't act, the financing conditions. Some of you may have things like a sustainability linked loan, that could be public or private. And so that's when it really, really matters. With my current role, have just saved a 6-figure sum in terms of hitting 2 out of our 3 sustainability linked loan metrics. Now, suddenly I've got the CFO's attention, right? And in doing that, what that then allowed me to do is I then managed to get that individual to be our ESG board sponsor. So these are little ways that you can kind of get to the board and influence, right? Next slide, please. So next we're looking at the Chief Operating Officer or operational leaders, transformational change people in that world. They absolutely fear disruption and they are really less concerned about emissions. So how do we work with these individuals? So production schedules, operational continuity, health and safety, cost control dominate everything within operations. If you've got facilities teams, if you've got offices, service goods, all of these manufacturing, all of these elements, you can imagine what it's like. And I closely map an operational director with kind of a program manager, that they're operating multiple different areas. So they often, in terms of what we do, fail because we're perceived as creating extra work, right? How often have we sat there and gone, how am I going to shoehorn this into everything else that they do and all the other priorities, right? So translate what we do into operational language, position initiatives around efficiency, process optimization, resilience, reduced waste, reduced downtime on machinery, for example, or creating a lot more certainty around operational procedures. And if operational leaders believe that kind of sustainability will slow things down, if it's going to increase bureaucracy or it's going to disrupt productivity, we are inevitably going to hit a wall, right? And again, I think most of you know that. So it's like, if we know what these senior leaders are going to object to, that's the narrative that we need to put into place. Next slide, please. So, HR, talent, people strategies. Now, some of you have a lot to do with people, some of us don't. The two main areas really here are around retention and attraction. We've got younger workforces coming in who increasingly expect values to be aligned. And also when they're in an organisation, that sense of pride around the volunteering days, or if they're B Corp, or that we've got these science-based targets, there's definitely an element and a momentum moving forward. So really what we need to be able to do is align how we strengthen workforce resilience, well-being, leadership trust, and employee retention. One of the biggest reasons why people leave jobs is because they don't have trust in their leadership. Next slide, please. So looking at procurement, legal and risk, that's quite a lot to put into one slide, I appreciate. But risk is one of the strongest boardroom entry points for ESG. Now, I'm not suggesting for 1 minute you go in with a big 5 list of blaring red flags. But essentially, this is your kind of way in. So I've worked with risk managers, I've worked with health and safety when we're going through ISO 400. And again, it's kind of taking those first financial concerns and kind of again mapping the narrative. What happens if we don't follow that framework? What if somebody reads something? What if that carbon reduction plan is full of greenwashing? What are these risks that we face? And then of course with procurement, wow, anyone on this call will know scope 3 emissions is a huge area. So yeah, I guess that would be a webinar in its own right. But the resilience of our procurement, our suppliers, what happens if floods, fires, issues with transport and logistics, the list goes on. Next slide, please. Oh, I forgot all about the poll. Fantastic. So what I would love to do here is just get an idea of essentially, I'm just going to move this over a little bit because I can't see the question, but what are your biggest challenges? Now, I've picked some options here, but I'd love to just get an idea. If you could just take the next 30 seconds or 40 seconds or so, what's the biggest barrier you face when trying to secure boardroom senior leadership? Is it providing commercial ROI? Is it securing a budget in the first place, an investment? Is it trying to understand the board's language, overcoming internal resistance, competing with short-term priorities, or is it aligning ESG with the strategy? I'll give you a couple of minutes and I'll have a quick drink. I think I might vote as well myself, actually. I am going to go with that one. Oh, no, I can't vote. Damn. Ooh. Oh, okay. So less bothered about speaking the board language. Okay, that's okay. And aligning with the strategy. What that tells me essentially is that you're working in businesses who are communicating the strategy well, and you're able to translate that into what you do. Fantastic. Competing with short-term priorities is a third. Internal resistance, budget, and ROI. Okay, that's really insightful. Thank you very, very much. And hopefully in the Q&A later, we can bash out some ideas and fly some questions in. So thank you. Next slide. Okay, so this is really about how do we build the ESG business case to get it approved. Just kind of stop selling ESG and let's start selling projects, business cases, innovations that just happen to focus on ESG as an element as well. So the first concerns are always going to be financial return and secondly, time, right? So what we need to do is demonstrate savings, equally demonstrate avoiding any costs that we might have, revenue opportunities and margin protection. So we've just worked recently and we've looked at the potential revenue growth ideas around if we take a certain service and we overlay ESG elements, what that can deliver over the next 3 to 5 years business case. So suddenly the commercial and the big business team are really interested, and then that's how you start those conversations going. The second concerns are really about risk. So explain the legal stuff, the regular stuff, and the supply chain kind of reputational areas as firm as possible, and the consequences of getting these things wrong. There are loads of cases for you out there now where you can Google, whether it's Client Earth or the Good Law Project, where people are getting things wrong. So lots of examples for you out there. And the third concerns kind of operational resilience. So show reliability, efficiency, and the benefits. And the fourth is around stakeholders. When I was in innovation, look at it as if you're doing a project and you're moving through the idea, feasibility, development, credibility, and you start to sharpen the numbers as you go, that's what you need to do here. It's no different whatsoever. And then explain the advantage. What advantage is this going to give you? I know where I am now. It's all about the fact we do things because we want to do them. None of them are mandatory. There are some of the frameworks are, but for us, example at the moment, B Corp, science-based targets, they're not mandatory. We choose to do them because it's the right thing to do. Next slide. So demonstrating the ROI, you just touched on this in your in the poll, so thank you. The reality is, if you can't quantify any value, the executives are always going to struggle to justify investment, but not every single piece of ESG requires investment. So, for example, the internal engagement. So, having those internal pressures, that takes psychological understanding, it takes internal engagement, it takes time and passion and energy. But equally, once you've hit that, some of those blockers start to drop. So when people understand carbon, when they understand the benefits and the risks and the resilience, some of those doors start to open. That's when you can start to understand the commercial value. Never be afraid to go to your commercial director and say, help me put a return on investment on this. You haven't got to do this all on your own, okay? There are experts within your business who can help you kind of flip that narrative. Next slide, please. So influencing skills that we all essentially need. Wow, how much technology is there in ESG? How many acronyms and things like that? It's very similar across the business, but our technical knowledge is huge, right? There are 17 goals, 300 objectives. We deal with every business function. There's nobody there that doesn't have data that we don't desperately need, both internally and externally. But it just simply isn't enough. And I've spoken about this before, but essentially, we can't know it all, but we have to keep pushing ourselves to kind of express our knowledge, but don't underestimate the organizational kind of politics and influence, and how to deliver our messages in a different narrative that's motivational is going to be critical in what you do in terms of empathy, understanding, and then action, always having that action piece. we're often kind of resisted because they fear disruption. And also there's that criticism, right, that they fear. So that's always going to be a challenge. And even strong professionals often fail if our timing's wrong, right? We can't often predict what's going to happen geopolitically. But rest assured, influence requires patience, sequencing, and an awful lot of relationship building. So yeah, that's definitely a big one for me. Next slide. So practical tips to get by, and I'm really conscious I've probably got about 4 more minutes and a couple of slides to go. So this is all summarised at the end. So don't worry if you're trying to take notes, and you will get the slides as well. So how successful ESG leaders influence with authority. I love this one because ultimately these are the power meetings. These are the meetings where you do the mini fist bump as you come out. So essentially, board buy-in rarely comes from one meeting. I think you know that unless you've got a real entrepreneurial board or CEO where you can go in, give them the story, and they go, "I'm bought in, let's go." And I have experienced that. The reality is that we ourselves as professionals, we have to build support across all functions: finance, ops, procurement, supply, HR. And at every single moment where there are potential formal board conversations, I can't recommend enough having a sponsor. Same principle in innovation and projects: have a sponsor on the board, because it's such a door opener. And also the gatekeepers to the board. Never forget the EAs or PAs, not sure what the relevant terminology is these days, but these guys can really open doors for you. Chocolate, biscuits, wine, anything like that. So, and often a respected leader influences these people at different levels at different times than just sustainability teams on their own. And often we can feel alone, and that's how it often is. We might not have a team, we might be one person. There might be people on this call, it's like, geez, Rhona, there's only one person. How am I going to do all of this? But setting those benchmarks is really, really important, and those stepping stones to work upwards. Otherwise, it's just always going to be a no and a door shut. Next slide, please. So, what absolutely doesn't work? Well, do I need to tell you guys this? But essentially, common killers for ESG. Leading with guilt rarely works. I've tried that one with different characters, and sometimes it's backfired. Sometimes it's made them stop and think, but we have to be careful in using that one. You've got to have a certain character. They rarely respond positively to moral pressure or accusations. That will just get people defensive. Using very vague language often destroys credibility, creates misunderstanding. And words that we use, such as impact, sustainable journey, purpose, just completely become meaningless without any evidence, right? People are used to facts and numbers, and that's, what we need to focus on. Try and avoid, I guess, overwhelming people with technical terminology. It's a bit like if you went into a boardroom or a manufacturing plant, and the head of the production line bombarded you with all the technology. You just wouldn't have a clue. You'd disengage and you'd lose interest. It's no different to us, right? Don't present ambition without the how and the implementation. And the board will often lose confidence when strategy appears disconnected from any delivery within the business. If ESG is going to sound like an additional burden rather than an enabler, or will kind of increase resistance, honestly, just don't bother. You're just creating more blockers for yourselves. And the list goes on. I'm sure you guys could add in a load more there. Next slide, please. Oh, I think we've just had that one, haven't we? Oh, no, we haven't. Sorry, that's me. Ignore me. So, in terms of focusing on, have we got this slide? Sorry, go back one. Apologies. Okay, great. Sorry. So, what are the main blockers that we face? We'll list these. Short-term financial pressure often crowds out our long-term investment strategy, right? We're always thinking long-term. We know governments work in 4 years. Boards often work quarterly, yearly. So there's a natural tension there. Leadership turnover, that can change so many things, right? I'm sure you've all experienced it either in an ESG role or previous roles. Operational fatigue, that creates resistance, economic uncertainty, which there is nothing you guys or I can do about, right? So we'll often see businesses reverting to survival mode, and that is very much here and now, right? With the geopolitics, cost of living, etc. We're definitely in that mode right now. Our internal politics frequently slows ESG, and then a lot of a lot of execs really fear being held to account or putting their voice out there. So some boards will also privately worry about the risk associated with over promising. So how do we give them the confidence without that fear of going, but what if? What if I fail? I've not met many people who will happily say, I failed and right. And I think you guys know that. Next slide, please. Overcoming resistance in practice. Shift the conversation from obligation to opportunity. If executives say to you, right, just now is the right time and to discuss the cost of delay. Don't get defensive, don't argue, just focus on what the cost of delay might be. If they say, sorry, we've got no budget, then say, okay, well, what about if we identify delivery or operational savings through the activation that I want to implement? How does that then look? If they question the return on investment, you need to strengthen the financial modelling. And again, don't fear working with your internal guys to, to help them help you, because they will automatically see it through a different lens. If they fear disruption, then do some test pilots, right? Remove the fear at every opportunity. If it lacks ownership, then embed the accountability across various functions. Again, it's what I did in projects, it's what I did in innovation. It was never one person's role. Explain the effective kind of anticipated resistance. So again, think about the risks and then mitigate against them. Go, do you know what? It's okay, guys, because if this has happened, this is our mitigation plan against it. And then the preparation to all of this, I think, to summarize this slide, is more important than the actual presentation itself. Next slide, please. Right, a little bit of a final challenge and a call to action, but I guess it's stop asking the board to care more about ESG. Stop the conversation about why don't they care? I just don't get it. It's like everything we want to do is for the right reasons, but they just won't do it. Close powerfully. Pretend you're going in as a commercial director. Pretend you are owning that business strategy. Challenge your participants to rethink things differently. Don't go in and tell, get them to engage. Boards are not persuaded by passion alone. If it was, honestly, I would be the world's most expensive ESG person, and I'm sure most of you on the call would be too. They're persuaded by credibility, relevance, timing, and evidence. That's it. Don't ever be afraid to come out of your shell and really own it when you have those meetings. The strongest professionals understand our world and business psychology. And before your next board conversation or leadership meeting, ask yourself this one difficult question. Am I presenting or telling in my language, or am I expecting my executives to just learn mine? Then, depending on the answer, then you know what you need to do. So that question will often determine whether or not your ESG gets funded or forgotten. Next slide. I'm not going to go into these right now, but these are the top 10 takeaways that for after the call you can take away. It summarizes everything that we've done, and in 2 short slides will give you you could print them off and put them in your at work or on your laptop. Just literally, whenever you're going for a meeting, cross-check these top 10. So next slide. there is 10. There's 10 here that you can cross check and go, right, have I hit all of these areas? Right, I'm ready. And that's your checklist to hopefully help. Next slide. I went 5 minutes over, so that only leaves 25 minutes. But apologies. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rhona. That was excellent. That was very, very relevant to my role in particular. I think helping clients create compelling business cases is something that I do as part of my role. So that's really useful. I'm really interested to see what other people think about this because our experiences over the last couple of years making a compelling ESG business case that's successful is becoming harder. I don't know if that's because there's just more ESG initiatives that are competing for the same budget or whether the atmosphere's changed around this. I mean, certainly net zero has become more controversial, so maybe that's had some influence. But yeah, very interested to hear what other people think. But hopefully today's session is going to help regardless. I'm just going to let you know about the next very exciting webinar that we've got. But just before I do, I'd just say it would be very helpful if you could add in your questions into the Q&A facility now, and then we can come to those in a moment's time. So any questions, no matter how silly they might sound, pop them in and we'll come to those in a minute, and that'll be really, really useful. But before we get there, I just want to let you know about the People's Emergency Briefing that we're going to be showing on the 5th of August. We're really excited about this. This is a documentary, a very powerful documentary that explores the risks that we all face in an increasingly uncertain world, from climate change, energy security to food, health and resilience. But more importantly, it focuses on the practical things that we can all do, individuals, communities, organisations, that we can all take to respond to the climate emergency. Really recognisable faces like Chris Packham, Deborah Meaden, Jennifer Saunders, but also respected figures like Lord Deben as well. This is, as far as I'm aware, the only digital screening of this. So there's been hundreds of screenings that are in person all around the country, but I think we're going to be the first organisation that's actually had permission to show this digitally. So this is actually unique. It's really important, I'd say. I'd say it's definitely one to put in the diaries and attend. Okay, so that's what's up next. But for now, the Q&A. I think we have had some come into the Q&A as we've been talking. So this one is from Lorna. So where did you learn all of this? And other than in practice, which is high stakes, where could we practice this, please?
Oh, I love that question. Thanks, Lorna. I guess I'm a little bit old, so I've had quite a long career in commercial marketing, innovation, project management, change management, transformational change. I've had a bit of a pick and mix when it comes to a career. But essentially, it's learning those different skills. So when I came into ESG, like probably a lot of people, I just thought, this is the right thing to do. I want to do this. And I genuinely thought, well, okay, I've got a USP, right? I've got all this business knowledge. I've sat on a production line. I've been in a garment manufacturing in Vietnam. I have, done the gap partnership training at my time at Red Bull in terms of how to commercially negotiate. I think, Lorna, it's lots of years over lots of different business functions. That'll be the first point. And the second part of your question, I love that. Everyone hates this, but it's kind of that role playing. Pick a work buddy that you can use or another ESG professional that you know, and just do like role plays. So a bit like when you're doing influencing others or negotiating skills, you will often have to face an individual and in real time answer their objections. The other thing, check out if your business has online coaching. The place that I'm currently at does. And so you can literally talk to an AI coach and throw it loads of kind of practice sessions, and it will throw back objections at you. So that's a really cool tool to use. If the business doesn't have it, you might be able to just do that online anyway. But yeah, it's lots of years of experience, but it's thinking not as an ESG professional, thinking as what are those main, think about the capitalist world, think about how our economy is built. That's how you get through the door.
Excellent. This is a question from an anonymous attendee. I can see why it is, but I think it's a real challenge that lots of people will be having. It's about
Okay.
working with colleagues. So, a new sustainability director, all about doing what the board wants, typical people-pleasing behavior. This is undermining the past 2 years' worth of work, and my access has been blocked. Help.
Oh my God. Right, I'll try and keep this clean and polite. So I think just to relay that back, you've got a new sustainability director and all your access has been blocked to the board, is that? Um now,
Yeah.
now there are some really cheeky ways you can do this. So absolutely respecting the new sustainability person. I'm sure you've sat down, had a chat to them, want to know what their history is, where they've come from, what they want to do. Definitely check out that they are aligned to the current strategy. So get them to feedback on the last 2 years, what's worked, what hasn't. Now, nowhere in any job should any culture ban you from speaking to anyone within the board, first and foremost. I know that can make people feel uncomfortable, but that is the truth. Um, I don't know if you work in an office or remotely, so I don't know if you can often bump in or have a coffee or I I'll be brutally honest, I'm really ballsy and I'll just email them. I will literally email the CFO or whatever and go, do you know what? Could I please grab 5 minutes of your time? You're not going over and above the sustainability director, right? But there are different ways to approach these people. And I just find knowing the PAs, the EAs, and just asking direct, people find it really hard to then go, no. So, without a really good reason, you might keep getting put off. So, recently I've just done carbon training for the board, and I was delayed 5 times, like seriously 5 times. But you just don't give up. So, don't take it for granted that it's been cut off. Don't just take that as given. Absolutely go and speak to these people. And if you're in a culture that creates fear and blocks access, there's probably a bigger question there to face. But I think if you translate some of your great work into business case wins and politely share it wider, CCing in your director, that's another way of doing it as well.
Advice. Another one from Lorna. So, would a business course, this is about training, so would a business
Yeah.
course be useful if you don't have a business background yourself?
Well, that's a really good one. Again, depending on how big your organization is, you'll often find that if you go and chat to the head of people, HR, whatever they call themselves, there's lots of different training it already in existence. If you're with a business, you've probably got marketing, commercial, and the obvious functions, right? So my first port of call is go and have a chat to HR and people, see what training courses already exist. But yeah, I definitely recommend. Um, Doing some kind of commercial negotiation. If a company doesn't have a course, there are loads online that don't necessarily cost money. There might be, if you Googled now, top 10 influencing negotiating tips, there'll be tons of things on YouTube, right? I still, to this day, if I've got a blocker, I will ask a mate, I will ask my daughter, who is 13, because they have a brilliant way of just looking at it from a different lens. And then I'll just kind of bash it out and talk to myself on AI. So we are surrounded by resource, whether that's AI, YouTube, whatever. I definitely recommend if you don't have any business experience, do some reading up, take your head out of ESG and put your head into how do I build a business case? How, if I was bringing a new product to market, what are those key stages that I'd need to hit for that board to go, yes, we're going to invest, we're going to launch that product and or service, because those key stages will give you the clues about where and how to influence. I hope that's helped.
Yeah, I'm sure it will have done. Now this is interesting because it's written from an anonymous attendee again, but she's saying that, well, I say he or she, from a charity, feels like the
Yep.
challenges are even harder, and you can completely understand why. So whilst ROI is important, short-term growth, objectives to support more families will always come first. How can I get ESG a seat at the table, and be more realistic with expectations?
Well, first and foremost, that is like a double smack in the face because often when I try to explain what it's like working in ESG, I'll often say it's like working for a charity because you know it's the right thing to do. Who in their right mind is going to listen to somebody from a charity and go, well, I wouldn't give you a penny? No one, right? Because it's the right thing to do. It's very emotive. It could be animals, it could be children, it could be alcohol abuse, whatever. The way I translate that essentially is that charities, for example, are all competing against themselves. So you might have 50 horse charities, 50 dog charities, 50 mental health charities. So there's a bigger piece there around how can those all come together to create a bigger impact. It's no different then to how do you achieve that in that competitive set to your internal objectives. I go back to take the objectives of the charity and try to change the narrative, depending on what the charity is, about what we do and how it will drive either it could be awareness, it could be de-risking, it could be new business, sorry, not new business, but new donations, new influencers. Try and look at it as if it's a marketing strategy or a commercial strategy, and then take that to the board and say, this is how my experience is going to drive increased uptake, donations, awareness. But
Uh,
I really don't envy. Like, I
mm,
totally can understand how frustrating that is.
yeah, likewise. One from Nick Lawrence. So, what advice would you offer to someone looking to establish an ESG committee within a large organization? Because this can be hard to do, can't it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Lawrence. So I'm just about moving roles actually. So the one that I'm going to already has a committee. They have sort of 50,000 employees. So I'm yet to get my teeth into that. But where I am now, I created one. So I've just been doing a fixed term contract here at Cooper Parry. But what did I do and how did I do it? So essentially, I spent some time going around all the different offices, speaking to reception, looking for the main gatekeepers, and just I don't have a problem walking up to randoms and just saying, hi, this is what I do. Are you interested? I love asking people, do you care about ESG or generally do you just not care? Like really be brutally honest. And you'll get those that go, yeah, I really do. And then others just go, no. The other thing that I do at the minute as well is every time we take on new people, there are two ways that new starters come in. One is around the youth apprentice program. So I always present to them, regardless of whether they end up getting a job with us or not, they get 20 minutes with me, which is probably enough. And then everybody who joins Cooper Parry also then has to go through a mandatory sustainability training course, and that focused on specifically why we do what we do and the importance of that at Cooper Parry. So hopefully you've got those things in place or opportunities to influence. And then I then went out on the intranet and started to say, hey, we're building this team. We kind of had one before, but it died. Who's interested? Who wants to come on board? And I grew it from like 6 people to just under 40 in about 8 months. So it takes time. Um, but they're so powerful. Like I know why you want to do it. So good luck to doing it. But again, it goes back to that open dialogue, influence, identifying key stakeholders. One bit of advice, make sure that when you do your committee, have some clear objectives, keep going back to those objectives every quarter. How are we doing? What have we achieved? And spread the accountability. Give the committee objectives to help you deliver yours. It's often very easy to get people who aren't as influential in businesses because they're working on passion. Try and get some ones that are good luck.
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of this seems like it's about making friends and influencing other colleagues. So, and just being brave and banging the drum. So, yeah, that's really
Yeah.
interesting to hear how you've done that. Hopefully, that's helpful to Nick. This is similar. This is about how to communicate with the board again now. So, this is from Matt. Shenton. So, do boards appreciate face-to-face interaction, or given time pressures, do they prefer initial video calls, etc.? I always try to go with face-to-face, but I just wonder if I need to keep options open and be a bit more fluid. What do you think?
Well, like I said earlier, none of these things happen in one meeting. So the tactic that I often use is little and often. I tend to try and put myself in people's faces as frequently as possible, but with minimum interactions. It's just little chunks every now and again. And then, because I've built that bit of rapport, because I've made them feel guilty that they can't turn their back on me or pretend they're walking off in a different direction, that's when I'll then hit them with the, do you know what? Can we just grab 10 minutes? I really think you need to sit down and understand this. So I think it's little and often, absolutely, like just ask for 10 minutes. Don't forget the 20 minutes, 45, 50, whatever. They're not interested, right? I think if you can appreciate that and be really succinct. I was it probably 9 years ago, I had to sign off a £10 million capex project to the UK and global board on one slide, literally one slide, and I had 20 minutes. Now, you can imagine the reiterations that I had had up until that point, but that was my challenge. And it was such a really unique skill to learn that I can now go in and do things like that on one slide and be really, really impactful. If you can get it on one slide, that's going to get you through the door. So little and often, never be shy to say, hi, here's a coffee or whatever. Harder if you work remotely. Protect time, keep it short, keep it one page. Um, just get on the nerves.
So is that just building from that then, is that another piece of advice that you'd give if you can and you're able, be visible in the organization, be present. Obviously working from home has a place, but you think it's really important to really be there physically.
I think you do, yeah. I don't think, when we think about traditional roles in organizations, they're very much in their lanes. If you were to go up and see the finance team, they're all Excel spreadsheets everywhere and numbers and whatever. The marketing team are complaining that commercial are complaining that marketing spend the money and marketing, we tend to be very one track mind. We might, if we're lucky, be in an organization that actually works to the same business objectives and culture. That's a separate challenge in its own right. But yeah, we as professionals work interdependently across all business functions, and it's multidisciplinary. So if you are not there, if you don't understand those languages, we have a hard enough job as it is. So ask the stupid questions, admit when you get stuff wrong, go to people and go, help me understand. I don't know. Even if you know it inside out, who cares? Go and get their time. People love to talk about themselves and what they do.
Okay. Interesting one from Fabian Strobel, and that is, so how can we make the case for long-term sustainability, value creation, when short-term financial pressures dominate the board agenda and their attention is purely on the short term?
Great question. Thanks, Fabian. Couple of areas here. One, seek the right questions. So find out what strategy is your organization on. Let's be honest, it's normally growth, right? And continued revenue and sales tends to be the majority, or whether even if you're in the public sector, you've still got to deliver value. And then if you're in the charity sector, then you're still going to have to grow, awareness, donations, etc. This is all relatively similar. I tend to focus on the what if we don't do. If you've got a board that are essentially working out, whether that's a startup or a big organization, they're all about their next move, right? So unless it's a CEO who's about to retire, most CEOs are looking at their next move. So pull on the strings of what does that mean for them? What's the legacy they're leaving behind? If they're in a business that is getting ready for a buyout, that might be a purposeful one, i.e., the organization is doing lots of mergers and acquisitions, and eventually you've got this multiplier effect of the value of the business, because guess what? They're going to sell. This is what boards do, right? Then work on what's my investor risk going to look like? What's my buyer prospects going to look like? Again, a lot of this comes from understanding business and how they think. So if you know it's going to get to another, it needs funding or a buyout, look at the strength of the business commercially and financially. How much cash does the business have? A lot of this stuff you can get online, company's house. It's not like it's hidden and you don't have to be a finance expert, right? So I think it's the reality is, as harsh as it is, we are going to lose a lot of battles, right? Because that's just the world that we live in. But if you can focus on one or two big things, don't sweat a lot of the small stuff that we tend to do as ESG professionals. Focus on one or two big things and align them to either the money, the risk, the sale of, or the future reputation of the individuals involved.
Now that's really interesting, isn't it? Because we know that lots of CEOs they're not there for a long time necessarily. So yeah, that's interesting. I'm going to jump to one from Martin Godden. We've got 4 minutes left, but this is a good
Okay.
one again. So, do you find presenting ESG budgets as seed investment, is that effective where returns are reinvested in ESG related initiatives rather than pitching for larger budgets that might be rejected?
Great question. I think you've probably answered your own question there, to be honest with you. I think it's a great tactic to use. So whether that's well, let's try it, suck it and see kind of budget, whether it's seed investment where you say, like big budgets, like we're going to go and put solar panels in, right? Big cost, but actually, when you translate that over 10 years, and then the savings that you get, but it's not just about savings, is it? It's risk. I mean, geez, the cost of energy right now and diesel and things like that. So again, depending on whether you're a product or a service, etc. So I think again, I wouldn't don't try to be a financial guru, but just always think about those key areas: de-risk, de-financial. Admit it. Say some things are going to cost money, and there isn't going to be a physical cash value. But then I often call it, instead of return on investment, I call it return on impact. Look at impact across your investment um, opportunities and how you look at it in terms of your reputation. Look at it in terms of retention, attraction. If you can't get anyone by doing all of those things for all of that, you have done your job. Never forget that if you've tried all of that, you have done your job. Okay. And we're not always going to win. But I love the idea of the seed investment. Absolutely. Package it up in a different way. Um, and also bear in mind, sometimes you make these savings and it won't go into any ESG strategies. Try and be okay with that. Try and be okay that if you hit a sustainability link loan or you create these savings, don't get overexcited. Go, great, I've got 50 grand or three, a million to put into ESG initiative. No, you haven't. That's going to go to the business bottom line generally, and be okay with that.
But we have got some more questions, but we've basically run out of time. Hopefully I'm saying the right thing here. We're going to commit to coming back to everybody who's asked questions anyway with answers afterwards. So
I
thanks so
will.
much for putting them in. Really, really helpful. Hope you found the session useful. Thanks so much, Rhona. I thought it was excellent.
You're
Hopefully
welcome.
we do another one in another 3 months.
I think I'm coming back in September. We're doing something different.
Perfect. Great. Lovely. Thanks so much.
Bye.